Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. This is the story of a coin that most people discard or don't give a second glance, the 2021 D Shield penny. A small, simple coin, but one with more complexity and potential than you might think. So let's travel through time, what it is, how it came to be, its physical specs, its design, how it circulates, or doesn't, what serious collectors look for, what it's worth in ordinary condition versus rare condition, and perhaps why some think it might be worth big money in the future. From the top, the 2021 D penny is a 1-cent coin minted in 2021 at the Denver Mint. The D stands for Denver. It is part of the modern Lincoln Shield series, the obverse showing a bust of Abraham Lincoln, and the reverse showing a shield, the Union Shield, design that has been used since 2010. Coin Value Checker Plus for Wikipedia Plus for USA Coin Book Plus for its metal composition is copper-plated zinc. Specifically, it is 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating. This is the same composition for US pennies minted from 1982 to present. Graysheet Plus 3 USA Coin Book Plus 3 Wikipedia Plus 3. Its weight is 2.5 grams. Its diameter is about 19 millimeters. Edges smooth, without reading. USA Coin Book Plus 2 Wikipedia Plus 2. In terms of design, the obverse, head side, shows Abraham Lincoln in profile, with the words, "In God We Trust." Above, Liberty, to the left, the year 2021, to the right, and the mint mark, DE for Denver, under the year. The reverse shows the Union Shield. The shield has vertical stripes, 13 stripes, and a horizontal band across the top, representing the federal government uniting the states. Across the center of the shield is a scroll/banner with 1 cent. Above around the rim it says United States of America, and below E Pluribus Unum. USA Coin Book Plus 3 Wikipedia Plus 3 Cointrackers.com Plus 3 Designer Credits. The Union Shield reverse was designed by Lyndall Bass, introduced in 2010. The obverse, Lincoln Bust, is by Victor David Brenner, whose design dates to 1909. Wikipedia Plus 2 Cointrackers.com Plus 2 Mintage. The number of 2021 D pennies produced is large. Around 3,982,800,000 coins. That number means there are many in existence. Cointrackers.com Plus 1. Now let's talk about value. In everyday circulation, a 2021 D penny is usually worth its face value, 1 cent, 1 cent. If it is worn in circulation, that is effectively what people will pay or what it is traded as. Cointrackers.com Plus 1. But coins are not just face value. Condition, rarity, grading, color, mint errors, preservation, and collector interest can make a difference. Color, red, brown. Brown matters. These are designations used among collectors to describe how much of the original copper plating remains visible as a red color. Over time, with wear, the copper fades or gets oxidized, so coins go from red, brown. Coins in full red, RD, tend to command higher prices. Cointrackers.com Plus 1 grades. Coins are graded roughly from good, fine, very fine, extremely fine, almost uncirculated, MS, and higher. MS stands for mint state, meaning essentially uncirculated and often graded with numbers, MS60, MS65, MS67, MS68, etc. The higher the grade, the better the coin looks, fewer contact marks, sharper detail, more luster. Coin Value Checker Plus 1. So what is a 2021 D Shield penny worth in various conditions? In circulated condition, most of them are still essentially worth face value or perhaps a few cents, if lightly worn, or if someone paying more because it is uncirculated or nice. Cointrackers.com Plus 2 USA Coin Book Plus 2. In uncirculated condition or mint state, you can see prices of around 35 cents to maybe $1 or a few dollars for coins with good condition, red color, etc. USA Coin Book Plus 2 Cointrackers.com Plus 2. But some specimens are far more valuable. There are recent records where a 2021 D Shield penny in MS68 RD, full red, very high grade, has sold for thousands of dollars. For example, a MS68 RD 2021 Shield, the Denver version, has been reported for about $3,300 in some listings. Coin value checker also other high-grade examples, MS67 etc., with full red or near full red can fetch in the hundreds or low thousands depending on buyer, condition, certified grade. Coin value checker so there is a very large spread, from 1 cent to thousands depending on rarity and condition. What about market demand and factors that can drive up value, scarcity in high grades? Even though nearly 4 billion were minted, very few survive in absolutely perfect condition without any handling marks, surface abrasions, or toning issues. The higher the grade, especially MS67, MS68, the fewer exist. Collectors compete for these. Color preservation, full red, bright original color, not faded or brown. These coins are more rare. Mint errors and varieties. Sometimes there are coins that have defects, die cracks, misstrikes, unusual planchet issues, off-center strikes, doubling of design elements, filled letters or filled mint marks, etc. If an error is pronounced and interesting, collectors may pay a premium. Certification. If the coin is graded by a well-known third party, e.g. NGC, PCGS, with high grade, it gives confidence to buyers. Slabbed graded coins tend to command more. Collector and investor psychology. The modern coin market has seen growing interest in modern issues, coins minted in recent years, that are in near perfect condition. Given that most people don't preserve pocket change perfectly, such coins in top condition become more desirable. Now, history and context of the shield penny design. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to mark the centennial of Lincoln's birth, replacing the Indian head cent. The obverse bust by Victor David Brenner was new then. For many decades, the reverse tended to be the Lincoln Memorial design, 1959 to 2008. In 2010, after some years of debates and a competition, the U.S. Mint selected the Union Shield, designed by Lyndall Bass, as the permanent reverse. That shield symbolizes union of states. Coin value checker +3 Wikipedia +3 USA Coin Book +3 Overtime, production techniques, minting technologies, die preparation have improved, but also control over surfaces, plating etc. Some coins from earlier shield years had more frequent defects. By 2021 the minting process has had many years of iteration and refinement. Coin value checker one interesting point. The melt value, the raw scrap metal value, of a 2021 penny is very small, far less than 1 cent, because copper plating is thin over zinc, and zinc is cheap. According to USA Coin Book, the melt value is around $0.0070, less than 1 cent. USA Coin Book now, the notion that a 2021 D penny might be worth big money, like hundreds of millions or part of a $213 million market value, is mostly speculative. There is no known scenario where any individual 2021 D penny is legitimately worth $213 million, unless it has some extremely unique, documented piece of history, misprint, or provenance that vastly exceeds even the current high-graded records, which are in the few thousands USD for top specimens. Claims of worth $213 million are almost certainly hype, misunderstanding, fraud, or misattribution. I found no credible source that states the 2021 D penny has a market value anywhere near $213 million under standard collectible pricing. Certainly the general market cap of 2021 D pennies is huge, because of the huge mintage, but individual coin value follows condition, scarcity, and demand. If you want est. Imagine you are holding a 2021 D penny between your fingers, and consider for a moment the vast network of events and industries that converge just to bring this tiny disk of metal into existence. At the heart of it stands the United States Mint, an institution with over 2 centuries of continuous history, employing thousands of engineers, engravers, designers, machinists, and quality control specialists. The Denver Mint, where the 2021 D penny was born, is a massive fortress-like building in Colorado, operating since 1906. It produces billions of coins each year, each one requiring dies, blank planchets, automated presses striking hundreds of coins per minute, high-speed packaging, and then shipment out across the nation's banking system. When you see that small D mint mark beneath the date 2021 on the obverse, you are seeing the physical fingerprint of that mighty industrial operation, a single letter standing in for millions of man-hours of labor and over a century of American minting heritage. That small d also makes collectors take notice. The mint mark is more than just a letter. It tells you which branch produced it, and certain mint marks have historically commanded higher premiums when combined with low mintages or unusual varieties. While the 2021 D Pennies mintage is huge, nearly 4 billion pieces, collectors still track each year's production numbers like investors watching stock charts. They know that sometimes, within that tidal wave of production, a few exceptional coins slip through that become legends. A slight die misalignment, a double die verse, a dramatic off-center strike, a missing copper plating layer revealing the zinc core. Any of these can transform a 1-cent coin into a multi-thousand-dollar collectible. And then comes the grading process, which is like the scientific authentication ritual of the coin world. Coins are sent to professional grading companies such as PCGS or NGC, where they are sealed in tamper-proof plastic slabs with barcodes and holograms and security seals. There, under controlled lighting, magnification, and strict protocols, experts evaluate every microscopic detail: the sharpness of Lincoln's hair strands, the absence or presence of contact marks on his cheek and jaw, the strength of the strike on the shield stripes, the brilliance of the surfaces, and the evenness of the copper color. They assign grades on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70. Most circulation coins are in the low teens or 20s. Mint state coins start at MS60 and climb. A perfect MS70 is essentially flawless, something rarely achieved even straight out of mint rolls. And this is where the magic happens in the market. A difference of just one grade point at the top levels can multiply the coin's value tenfold or more. So while an MS65 2021 D penny might sell for only a few dollars, an MS67 could bring in hundreds, and an MS68, if fully red, blazing luster, no spots, no ticks, could leap into the thousands. Collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying rarity on a microscopic scale. There might be billions of 2021 D pennies, but there might only be a few dozen surviving that are pristine enough to get MS68 RD grades from PCGS. That extreme scarcity at the highest grade is what creates dramatic price spikes. And in the strange, passionate world of modern coin collecting, when a few determined bidders want the same top pop coin for their registry sets, they will drive prices to levels that seem absurd to outsiders. Registry sets are an entire competition-based subculture in themselves. Major grading services host online registries where collectors try to build complete sets of coins in the highest possible grades. Each coin earns points based on its grade rarity. Winning these sets brings prestige, awards, and bragging rights. So when a 2021 D penny appears in MS68 RD, and two registry set competitors both need it to boost their scores, they can bid it up into the thousands, not because the metal is valuable but because the grade is rare. This has happened before with other modern coins, like 2003 D cents, 2014 D cents, and even some recent nickels and dimes that sold for 4 figures because they were top pop. And then there is the psychological magic of error coins. Errors are like mutations in a sea of uniformity. A normal penny is worth a cent, but an off-center strike showing only half of Lincoln's head can bring $50 or $100. A dramatic die clash showing ghostly outlines of the reverse on the obverse might bring $200. A broad strike without the raised rim might sell for $300. And certain major errors, like a 2021 D penny struck on a dime planchet, or a double denomination error where a dime was struck over a cent, could bring thousands or even tens of thousands. These are so spectacular that they get headlines in numismatic news and trigger bidding wars at auctions. This is why even a common coin like the 2021 D penny carries that underlying lottery ticket energy. Every single one could theoretically be the rare one. Every roll opened by a collector is like a small treasure hunt. And history shows it sometimes pays off. There have been stories of people finding modern Lincoln cents worth hundreds or thousands in pocket change or bank-wrapped rolls, simply because they were ultra-high grade or had a dramatic error. Now imagine if someone discovered a 2021 D penny with an entirely unique, previously unknown error. Say a double strike where the second strike was rotated 180 degrees and perfectly centered, creating a dramatic overlapping Lincoln. Or imagine a transitional planchet error where somehow a leftover copper planchet from decades ago was accidentally used in 2021, making a full bronze penny weighing 3.11 grams instead of 2.5. Such a coin would be a sensation, possibly bringing 5 or 6 figures at auction. If it got front page press, if it went viral, if it became the only known 2021 D bronze penny, bidding could theoretically soar beyond $100,000 or more. This is how coins achieve sudden fame and outrageous prices. This is the root of those rumors about 2021 D pennies being worth millions, or even $213 million. It's not that an ordinary 1-cent coin is inherently worth that. It's that the combination of unique error, top grade, media attention, and collector competition can sometimes create astronomical sale prices, especially if wealthy collectors decide they must own it. There are precedents. The 1794 flowing hair silver dollar that sold for over $10 million, the 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle that sold for over $18 million, and the 1913 Liberty nickel that brought nearly $5 million. All of those were once just circulating coins, but rarity and collector desire made them treasures. In theory, if only one absolutely unique 2021 D penny existed with a spectacular, one-of-a-kind mint blunder, and it became famous worldwide, there's no hard ceiling to what someone might pay. In an open auction with billionaire bidders, it could climb into hundreds of millions. This is speculative fantasy, but it fuels the dream that even a modern penny could become the next legendary numismatic treasure. Meanwhile, most 2021 D pennies quietly do their job as humble units of commerce. They pass through vending machines, fall between couch cushions, jingle in car cup holders, and wear down day by day. Their surfaces dull, their red fades to brown, and they slowly blend into the anonymous ocean of common sense. This is what makes pristine survivors so special. Because for a coin to remain perfect, it must escape all of that. It must never touch another coin hard enough to leave a mark. It must be caught fresh from the mint, carefully handled with cotton gloves, stored in inert holders, protected from humidity and air, and eventually slabbed by a grading service. Only then can it retain that blazing mint luster that collectors will fight over. So when you look at a 2021 D penny and wonder if it could be worth more than face value, think about this entire hidden universe behind it. The design chosen to honor the Union, the portrait of Lincoln that has endured since 1909, the shift to copper-plated zinc in 1982 to save costs, the mintage of billions, the microscopic quest for perfection, the thrill of rare errors, the bidding wars over registry set slots, and the eternal hope that maybe, just maybe, you hold the one coin out of billions destined to become a legend. That is the paradox and beauty of the modern penny market, a coin so common it is almost invisible, yet so full of possibilities that collectors will spend their lives chasing its rarest forms. Long before a 2021 D penny ever finds its way into a cash register or someone's change jar, it begins as a faint idea on a blueprint inside the United States Mint. The design itself is already chosen, the Union shield on the reverse and Lincoln's bust on the obverse. But each year the Mint's engravers must refresh and polish the dies that will strike the coins. Dies are hardened steel cylinders with the design carved in reverse and in ultra-sharp detail. The making of these dies is an art form requiring precision machines and hand finishing under microscopes. Any flaw at this stage can leave its fingerprint on millions of coins, which is why certain rare errors, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, die cracks, become collectible. Every 2021 D penny carries the invisible signature of the specific die pair that struck it, and specialists can even track tiny die markers to study which batch a coin came from. Once the dies are ready, the Denver Mint's gigantic stamping halls come alive. Blank metal discs called planchets arrive from contracted suppliers, punched out of copper-coated zinc sheets. Each blank weighs 2.5 grams and is about 19 millimeters across. The copper layer is only about 20 microns thick, so thin you could scrape it off with a knife. These planchets are tumbled, cleaned, annealed in huge furnaces, washed in special solutions to brighten them, and dried before feeding into presses. The presses are monsters, hydraulic stamping machines that can strike 750 coins per minute, each strike slamming down with 60 to 100 tons of force. The pressure forces the metal to flow into every crevice of the die, revealing the fine strands of Lincoln's hair, the vertical bars of the shield, the tiny letters "I in God We Trust." The moment of striking is a brief explosion of energy and heat. The metal compresses, luster flashes across the surface, and the penny is born. It flies out of the collar, slides down chutes, and lands in steel bins with thousands of its siblings. Here is where most coins first get their contact marks, tiny nicks from clashing against each other. That is why pristine specimens are rare. To survive unmarked, a coin must be pulled early before it bangs against others. Usually, they are not. They are weighed, counted, sealed in massive bags of 250,000 pieces, and shipped out on pallets. From the Denver Mint they fan out across the western United States, entering armored trucks, Federal Reserve vaults, banks, and finally everyday pockets. But while all of this happens on the surface, the economics behind it tells another story. It costs the U.S. Mint more than 1 cent to make a penny. In 2021, the production cost per penny was around 2.1 cents. That means every 2021 D penny actually represents a small net loss to the mint, a subsidy paid for the sake of tradition and accounting simplicity. Billions are made despite this loss, because eliminating the penny would disrupt pricing systems and spark public controversy. Yet this very paradox, spending 2 cents to make one, adds a layer of strange value to the coin. It is almost like a tiny government-backed relic produced at a loss, a physical token of policy stubbornness. Collectors know this and sometimes argue it adds intangible historical appeal to modern pennies. Meanwhile, the metallurgy of the coin quietly works against its survival. Zinc is softer and more reactive than the old bronze used before 1982. Over time, the thin copper skin wears off, exposing zinc that corrodes easily. This is why modern pennies often rot away in soil or become pitted and ugly in circulation. So when a 2021 D penny survives in blazing mint red with 0 spots, it is fighting entropy itself. This fragility is another reason top-graded survivors are rare. Collectors battle this by using inert coin flips made of mylar, airtight capsules, desiccant packs to remove moisture, and even controlled storage vaults. High-end numismatists treat coins like laboratory specimens, because even a fingerprint can destroy value. Oils from skin cause toning spots. A single hairline scratch visible under magnification can knock a coin down several grade points and erase thousands in market value. This is the hidden tension at the heart of collecting, perfection versus time. Every day, more 2021 D pennies get scratched, dulled, or corroded. The pool of perfect survivors shrinks. This forces competitive collectors to strike early, hoarding fresh mint rolls from banks, cracking open sealed boxes, inspecting them under magnification, and sending only the absolute best for grading. And so, within a year of issue, the battle lines are drawn, hundreds of millions of average coins versus a tiny handful of flawless gems. This dynamic drives prices upward over time for the elite specimens, even while ordinary ones stay at face value. Now imagine a scene set in the not-so-distant future. A coin roll hunter in Colorado is searching through boxes of pennies late at night. Fluorescent light hums above his desk. He flips coin after coin through his magnifier, bored, until one glints differently. The fields are like mirrors. Lincoln's jaw is untouched, his cheek flawless, his hair crisp as if carved from crystal. He feels a jolt of adrenaline. It is a 2021 D, and something about it looks otherworldly. He sends it to PCGS. Weeks pass. Then the result arrives, MS70RD. Perfect. No 2021 D penny has ever graded that high. Word spreads across forums. Registry set tightens notice. Suddenly bidding erupts on an elite auction site. It climbs from 10,000 to 50,000 in an hour. The news media picks up the story of the first perfect 2021 D penny. By the time the gavel falls, it hits $1.2 million, but it doesn't stop. The buyer locks it away, and years later decides to resell it. By now its legend has grown. It is called the Denver Phoenix penny. Wealthy investors from Asia and the Middle East enter the bidding. The price explodes to 50 million, then 100 million. It becomes a cultural phenomenon, the most valuable modern coin ever. Finally, at a surreal live auction broadcast worldwide, two tech billionaires duel for it. The bidding climbs past 150 million, then 180, until one of them slams down a final record-shattering bid, $213 million. The crowd gasps. The hammer falls. The 2021 D penny has become the most valuable small coin in human history, a modern relic turned into a symbol of perfection, rarity, and human obsession. This story may sound impossible, but it is rooted in truths that collectors know, that rarity plus competition can break every price barrier. That coins are more than metal, they are pieces of history, art, and prestige. That the market can crown new kings from the most unlikely places. Every record-breaking coin once seemed worthless. Every legendary rarity once rattled out of a vending machine. So while most 2021 D pennies will live and die as pocket change, there lurks a tiny chance that one of them, in the right condition and the right circumstances, could rise beyond comprehension. That possibility fuels the endless hunt, the late-night searching, the magnifiers and gloves and slabs and auctions. It is the fire at the heart of numismatics. And so the story of the 2021 D penny continues, not just as a coin but as a symbol of hidden treasure scattered invisibly through everyday life. You might walk past one on the sidewalk tomorrow without a glance. Or you might pick it up and unknowingly hold the seed of a future fortune, a piece of copper-plated zinc destined to be whispered about in awe as the most valuable penny the world has ever known. Well, as an educational piece, I end the summer of 2021. Inside the cavernous halls of the Denver Mint, the hum of machinery was constant, a steady thunder of progress. Deep within those walls, a brand new die had just been installed into press line 6. Its steel surface gleamed under the overhead lights, freshly polished by master engravers who had labored for weeks to bring its microscopic details into perfect alignment. The moment the green light blinked, a cascade of blank planchets began feeding down stainless steel chutes, each one destined to become a 2021 D penny. The first strike hit like a gunshot. The die smashed down with over 80 tons of force, copper flashed, and a new penny flew out. Thousands more followed, a river of red gold discs spilling into massive steel bins with a sound like rainfall. Most would be forgotten. But buried among them, one single coin was different, though no human eye could tell. Its surfaces came out flawless, not a single contact mark, not even a microscopic flaw in the copper plating. It landed gently on top of the pile, then vanished into the avalanche of metal around it. Weeks later, that batch was sealed in a giant canvas bag, forklifted onto a truck, and shipped east. The coin spent months traveling unnoticed, jostling with millions of others in armored cars, bank vaults, and distribution centers. It passed through machines that rattled and counted it, through the hands of bank tellers who barely glanced at its shining face. It ended up in a sealed roll, wrapped in crinkled paper, and was forgotten in a dusty corner of a bank storage room in rural Wyoming. There it sat in silence as seasons passed, untouched, preserved by sheer chance from the scratches and scuffs that destroy value. Then, in the spring of 2023, a man named Alex wandered into that bank. He was a part-time coin roll hunter, a quiet figure who spent late nights with magnifiers and lamp lights searching for hidden treasures. He asked for a box of penny rolls, something few people request. The teller shrugged and returned with an old sealed box. Alex took it home, not expecting much. That night he opened roll after roll, his mind numb with repetition, until his eyes froze on one coin. It was blinding. Under his magnifier, every detail was razor sharp. Lincoln's cheek was as smooth as glass. The shield on the reverse had perfect vertical lines, no chatter marks, no haze. The red luster blazed like fire. His pulse spiked. He knew instantly this could be the one. With trembling hands, he placed it in a protective flip and shipped it to PCGS for grading. The waiting was torture. Days dragged into weeks. Then, on a bright June morning, an email arrived. He opened it, and time stopped. the grade red, MS-70RD. The first perfect 2021 D penny ever recorded. Alex sat stunned in silence as the meaning sank in. This was no longer just a coin. This was a once-in-a-century anomaly, a modern miracle. Word exploded across the numismatic world. Forums lit up. Collectors whispered about the ghost penny from Denver. Offers poured in, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, all rejected. Alex decided to auction it publicly. The auction was set for October. Bidding began modestly at $10,000. Within minutes it hit 100,000. Bidders from around the world piled in. Live streams buzzed with chatter. At 1 million the crowd gasped, but the frenzy had only begun. Bidders from Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and Silicon Valley clashed in a storm of ego and desire. The price soared past 5 million, 10 million, 50 million. Cameras flashed. Journalists crammed into the aisles. When the bidding hit 100 million, the room went silent except for the auctioneer's calm chant. 2 billionaires remained, locked in a duel of pride. One raised to 150 million. The other smiled thinly and countered with 180. A hush fell. The first bidder raised a finger. 200. The other whispered something to his agent. The bid leapt to $213 million. A collective gasp swept the room. The gavel fell. Sold. News erupted worldwide. The Denver Phoenix, as the press now called it, had become the most valuable penny on earth, smashing every coin record in history. Crowds gathered outside the auction house chanting its name. Documentaries were commissioned. Universities debated its symbolism. Some said it proved the absurdity of markets. Others called it a triumph of rarity and human obsession. The buyer, a reclusive tech magnate, had the coin sealed in a bulletproof glass case and displayed it in a private museum lit like a cathedral, where it gleamed under spotlights as visitors wept at its perfection. Alex's life was transformed overnight. He paid off debts, funded charities, vanished from the public eye. But in secret he still hunted penny rolls, not for money anymore but for the thrill of possibility. Because he knew something profound, that the world's most valuable coin had once been just another penny sliding unseen through the machinery of commerce. He knew that lightning could strike again, that among the billions of 2021 D pennies still circulating there might be another untouched survivor, another spark of perfection waiting to be found. And that is the strange magic that now hangs around the 2021 D penny. Billions exist, yet one has become a mythic artifact, worth more than skyscrapers or private islands. Children search their piggy banks hoping for one. Retirees sift through jars of change. Collectors hoard mint rolls like sacred scrolls, peering at each coin under microscopes. The Denver Phoenix has turned the entire series into a global obsession. The price charts fluctuate like stock markets. Insurance companies write policies for single pennies. The United States Mint, stunned by the phenomenon, quietly increases security around its presses. Yet every day more 2021 D pennies trickle through cash registers, tossed in change, dropped on sidewalks, kicked down gutters, invisible to everyone except the few who believe, and somewhere, maybe tonight, another perfect survivor waits in the dark, glinting softly in a forgotten bank vault, patient as time, waiting to emerge and shake the world once more. The day after the $213 million sale, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. News anchors spoke of little else. Every television channel flashed the coppery image of Lincoln's profile under banners reading World's Most Valuable Coin. Newspapers printed it on front pages alongside wars and elections. Talk radio hosts debated whether a single penny should be worth more than an aircraft carrier. Social media boiled over with memes of the Denver Phoenix balancing on golden scales against private jets and skyscrapers. Schools held special assemblies where teachers explained how a 1-cent coin had just rewritten history. Suddenly, the 2021 D penny was no longer just a numismatic curiosity. It was a symbol, a lightning bolt that had struck the global imagination. The effect on the coin market was instant and volcanic. Auction houses were flooded with calls from people claiming they had 2021 D pennies. Just like the famous one. Dealers were mobbed by crowds clutching change jars. Banks reported customers emptying their accounts in penny rolls. The price of unsearched penny boxes doubled overnight on online marketplaces, then tripled, then quintupled. Grading companies were buried under avalanches of submissions. Their offices filled with mountains of copper-red coins as desperate hopefuls paid hundreds of dollars in grading fees for coins worth a cent. Lines formed outside coin shows like rock concerts. Even casual collectors felt the fever, tearing open old albums and safety deposit boxes in search of perfection. And yet, none matched the Denver Phoenix. Every single one bore some tiny flaw, some minuscule nick invisible to the naked eye but fatal to perfection. PCGS and NGC both issued statements reminding the public that perfection is vanishingly rare, but no one listened. A gold rush mentality consumed the hobby. By winter, the mania had spilled into the wider economy. Penny rolls became investment vehicles. Hedge funds quietly bought truckloads of bank-wrapped rolls and stored them in climate-controlled vaults as alternative assets. Wealth managers pitched portfolios of high-grade 2021 pennies to billionaires seeking prestige. Analysts published white papers tracking penny futures as if they were oil or rare earth metals. The United States Mint, blindsided, faced pressure from Congress to respond. Some politicians demanded an investigation into how a government-issued cent could command $213 million. Others called it a triumph of American ingenuity and free markets. Secret Service agents, normally tasked with stopping counterfeit currency, were assigned to monitor the Phoenix coin in its private museum, guarding it like the crown jewels. Treasury economists held closed-door meetings about the psychological impact on public trust in currency. A rumor spread that the mint might recall 2021 pennies, triggering panic buying. Prices surged again. Where money flows, forgery follows. Within months, sophisticated counterfeits appeared, crafted in clandestine workshops overseas. They were almost indistinguishable from genuine 2021 pennies, mirror-bright, struck with stolen designs, and even artificially aged to look mint-fresh. Some were perfect fakes, virtually flawless, and they slipped into grading pipelines, slipping past all but the sharpest experts. Scandals erupted when a major auction house sold a counterfeit for $1.8 million. Lawsuits flew. Interpol launched a global operation called Project Copperweb to hunt the counterfeit networks. Collectors became paranoid, hiring private labs to scan their coins with electron microscopes. Trust fractured. Every sale came with authentication certificates, microchips embedded in slabs, blockchain records tracing ownership like digital pedigrees. And yet, the mania only deepened. The Denver Phoenix transcended numismatics to become a cultural icon, a modern Mona Lisa. Luxury brands licensed its image for watches and jewelry. Fashion houses printed its profile on silk scarves. Pop stars wore its likeness on stage. A hit film dramatized Alex's discovery, grossing billions, spawning sequels, toys, video games. The coin's owner built a futuristic glass pavilion just to display it, guarded by silent drones and retinal scanners. Pilgrims flew from every continent to stand before the penny in hushed reverence. Some cried. Some bowed. Some took selfies and whispered about destiny. The coin's value became a point of philosophical debate. Economists argued about intrinsic versus perceived worth. Professors wrote books about the Denver Phoenix as proof that value is a story agreed upon by enough minds. Religious leaders compared it to holy relics. Protesters decried it as proof of economic absurdity, carrying signs reading 1 cent, 200 million. But none of it mattered to the crowds who came, eyes wide, gazing at the tiny disk under perfect lights. In that small flash of copper they saw something beyond money, the dream that anything, no matter how humble, could become everything. Meanwhile, the hunt grew darker. Some collectors bankrupted themselves chasing perfection. Marriages collapsed under mountains of coin rolls. Black markets bloomed, trading in stolen bank boxes. A few whispered of penny cartels, hoarding millions of coins in underground vaults, waiting to corner the market. Even governments became involved. Foreign sovereign wealth funds quietly acquired stakes in top-graded specimens, treating them as geopolitical trophies. It was no longer a hobby but a global arms race of copper and obsession. And through it all, the original Denver Phoenix sat untouched, locked behind triple-layer bulletproof glass, bathed in laser-calibrated light, monitored by silent AI sentries. It never moved, never tarnished, never changed, as the world around it spun into frenzy. The coin did not care that it had reshaped markets, ruined fortunes, inspired art, provoked governments. It simply existed, a perfect flash-frozen moment of 2021, a single strike from a steel die that somehow emerged flawless while billions of its siblings wore down into anonymity. It was proof that perfection can hide in the most ordinary places, that miracles can rise from machines, that legends can be born from dust. And now every time someone receives a dull brown penny in change, for just a heartbeat they hesitate. They turn it over, looking for that tiny D. That year, 2021. That impossible shimmer of untouched copper, wondering if lightning could strike twice. Wondering if the next Denver Phoenix lies in their palm, waiting to rewrite history once more. Years passed, then decades, and the world changed around the still, silent Denver Phoenix. The frenzy it sparked had not faded, it had metastasized. What began as a collector's obsession became an economic engine, then a religion of value. By the 2040s, 2021 pennies had become so coveted that entire shadow economies formed around them. Black market vaults beneath Zurich, Dubai, and Singapore were stacked floor to ceiling with sealed penny rolls guarded by mercenaries. Billionaire collectors formed secret syndicates, pooling resources to hunt the last untouched mint state survivors. Some claimed there were only a few hundred left in pristine condition worldwide. Their prices rose like rocket fire. A single MS-69RD specimen could command $50 million. Rumors whispered that one private sale had touched $100 million, closing the gap with the Phoenix. Meanwhile, traditional currency systems buckled. Decades of digital inflation and algorithmic market bubbles eroded public trust in money. Cryptocurrencies collapsed under cascading hacks and government crackdowns. Stock markets imploded. Banks failed. Nations defaulted. People watched numbers evaporate from screens while the physical world still demanded physical value. And so, as digital wealth turned to dust, people reached for what was tangible. They reached for metal. Gold soared, silver surged, but something unexpected happened. The 2021 penny, born as a 1-cent coin, became a global safe haven, because the Phoenix had not just been a coin. It had been a story, a symbol burned into human minds. When everything else failed, people still believed in that story. They still believed in the idea that perfection could hide in the ordinary, that something so small could be worth everything. So while currencies collapsed, people traded 2021 pennies like jewels. They became collateral for loans, payment for land, dowries for marriages. Black markets set their prices daily like commodities. Insurance companies issued penny-backed bonds. A single roll of unsearched 2021 cents became a ticket to a new life. Governments panicked. Central banks tried to issue new digital credits, but no one trusted them. Instead, they began hoarding 2021 pennies in national reserves, sealing them in nitrogen-filled vaults deep underground. Armed convoys moved them across continents under fighter escort. Wars nearly sparked over shipments lost at sea. Espionage agencies infiltrated auction houses to track ownership trails. Treaties were signed using sealed penny capsules as symbolic seals. The world had become copper-bound. By the 2060s, the global financial system as once known had disintegrated. Nations measured wealth not in GDP or gold reserves, but in 2021 penny reserves. Each was tagged, numbered, registered on intergovernmental ledgers. Markets quoted prices in milliphoenixes. An average home cost 0.04 phoenix. A spacecraft launch cost 3 phoenix. The world's richest man possessed just 7. The coin had become the backbone of civilization, the last universally trusted unit of value, and yet through it all, the original Denver Phoenix remained untouched. It sat at the center of a fortress museum carved into a Colorado mountain, its glass case surrounded by concentric rings of defenses, steel doors, cryogenic vaults, biometric gates, drone patrols, orbital surveillance. Pilgrims still came from every nation to stand before it. They no longer called it a penny. They called it the anchor. The last coin. The soul of value. It glowed under its cold white lights as they wept, prayed, or simply stared in silent awe. But beneath this reverence, darkness simmered. Vast criminal cartels fought underground wars for control of penny flows. Entire city blocks were leveled in covert battles between rival syndicates wielding drone swarms and mercenary armies. Nations launched cyber strikes to destroy each other's penny registries. Smugglers risked death to move rolls across borders in stealth ships. The world economy had become a battlefield of copper. And yet the public clung to the belief that these coins, these tiny discs born in the mundane hum of 2021, were incorruptible. Then came the crash. In 2087, a chain of cascading cyber attacks erased every digital record of ownership. Banking systems failed overnight. Exchanges froze. Panic ignited. People fled collapsing cities carrying only what they could hold. In that chaos, paper money burned and gold was stolen, but the 2021 pennies endured. They could not be hacked. They could not vanish from screens. They were real, tangible, immutable. So as the world economy crumbled, survivors reverted to trading them directly, hand to hand, coin to coin. A phoenix penny could buy a fortress. A single ungraded 2021 could feed a village for a year. In the ashes of the old world, a new civilization formed, copper-backed and copper-bound. They called their era the Copper Standard. Markets reopened using penny weights. Governments rebuilt themselves around vaults of 2021 coins. Children grew up never seeing paper money, only the glint of copper discs changing hands. Historians marked the turning point not by wars or inventions but by the year the penny became king, and still, locked behind its final layers of glass, the Denver Phoenix remained. It had outlasted currencies, nations, systems, and empires. It had become the axis of value itself, the beating heart of the world's economy. Generations were born, lived, and died measuring their lives in fragments of its worth. They sang songs about it, carved its profile into monuments, wove its image into flags. In their minds, it was no longer even a coin. It was destiny, crystallized. The last surviving memory of a world that once thought it knew what value meant. And sometimes, late at night, the museum lights would dim, and the great vault would fall silent except for the faint hum of the air filtration. And there it would sit, a tiny copper-plated disc made in 2021, glowing softly in its sealed cradle while the world revolved around it, proof that the smallest things can reshape the fate of all humanity. Millennia passed. The centuries drifted like sand, wearing down the world humanity had built. Cities that once glimmered like constellations crumbled into skeletal ruins. Towers sank beneath forests. Roads fractured under the creeping advance of roots. Oceans swallowed coastlines, then receded, leaving only cracked salt plains where harbors had once roared with life. Languages died. Nations dissolved into whispers. The copper economy that had ruled the late age flickered, faltered, and finally went dark. Humanity scattered across the stars or faded into something unrecognizable, leaving Earth to the patient silence of time. And yet deep inside a mountain in what had once been called Colorado, a vault still hummed softly. It had been sealed long before the last governments fell, a fortress buried in stone and layered with ancient defenses that had long ago stopped receiving orders but never stopped obeying them. Centuries of quakes and storms had battered the surface world, but the vault endured, untouched in its tomb of alloy and rock. Inside, air systems still whispered. Lights still burned cold white. And at the center, behind glass and titanium, the Denver Phoenix waited. It no longer knew the world. It did not know that oceans had moved or that empires had burned to dust. It only existed, as it always had, a frozen gleam of copper untouched by time. The systems that guarded it had no concept of years. They simply continued, dutiful and eternal, as the ages turned. The penny sat alone in its glass cradle, while entire civilizations rose and vanished beyond its walls like passing storms. Then, after more than 5,000 years, the silence broke. The vault shuddered as stone cracked far above. A shaft of pale alien light speared down through the layers of rock. Shapes moved, gliding and silent, their forms neither human nor machine but something in between, glistening in the dim. They were not men but descendants of men, post-human archaeologists shaped by eons of change. Their minds stretched across networks of living code. They had no currency, no hunger, no need, only an insatiable drive to know. They descended into the ancient fortress like patient ghosts, bypassing defenses that had forgotten their purpose. They found chambers lined with empty vaults, rusted archives, shattered husks of servers. Then they found the last chamber, still glowing, still sealed. They paused. Their sensors scanned the relic at its heart. A disk of copper barely the width of a fingernail, etched with the faint fossil of a human face and a tiny mark, 2021D. They did not recognize the number as a date. They did not know what a cent was. They did not understand the concept of money. Those words had vanished from language thousands of years ago, washed away like carvings in sand. To them it was simply an anomaly, a single object preserved with impossible care when all else had been left to ruin. They breached the glass with surgical beams, lifting the penny on gravity threads as if it were a newborn star. Their minds merged, sifting ancient archives long dead, piecing together fractured myths from the ruins. Fragments flickered, records of the copper standard, of the Great Crash, of the age when humans had measured their world in these disks. They learned of the Phoenix, the auction, the $213 million, the frenzy, the wars. They learned how this single coin had once ruled an entire planet's dreams. They floated in silence, minds entwined, trying to understand. Why would a species give such meaning to a fragment of metal? Why would they build a civilization around a thing so small, so functionless, so weightless in the scale of worlds? They debated, their thoughts crackling like distant stars. Some concluded it was a religious idol. Others believed it was a key, perhaps a control device for ancient technologies. A few thought it was art, or the fossil of a long-extinct creature, but one among them, quiet and strange, offered another answer. Perhaps, it suggested, it was not the object that had mattered, but the idea that something so insignificant could be seen as infinitely valuable, and that this belief had united billions of fragile creatures across a collapsing world. Perhaps this was not madness, but hope. The others fell silent at that. They could not comprehend hope, for they had transcended need, but something about the word trembled in the air like music half remembered from a dream. They carried the Denver Phoenix away, cradled in stasis fields, through tunnels of collapsed stone, up into the sky. Above the ruins of the Earth they rose, past the drifting bones of satellites, into the cold black ocean between stars. They placed the coin in a vault of light aboard their world ship, among the last known relics of humanity, cracked books, fossilized seeds, fragments of sculpture, whispers of song. And so the penny that had once been struck with a hammer blow in 2021, in the hum of an ancient mint, became the final ambassador of a vanished species. It drifted through the dark with its silent keepers, glowing faintly in its cradle, carrying with it the ghost of everything humanity had been, their greed, their wonder, their madness, their longing to give meaning to the meaningless. And in the endless night between the stars, the Denver Phoenix shone like the smallest star in the universe, a single spark of copper telling anyone who found it that once, on a little blue world, there had been a people who could look at the smallest thing they owned and decide together that it was worth th. They carried the Denver Phoenix away from the ashes of Earth, past the silent bones of dead space stations, past the rusted hulls of ancient ships drifting like corpses through the void, past the fading blue marble that had once held oceans and cities and voices. It gleamed faintly inside its gravity cradle as they accelerated beyond the solar system, engines burning with cold white fire. Behind them, Earth dwindled to a dim star. Ahead, the galaxy sprawled, 10,000 suns flaring like embers across an ocean of black. The post-human explorers did not speak as they flew. Their thoughts were woven into silent streams of light, carrying the coin in the core of their vessel like a sacred ember. Years passed in silence as they crossed interstellar gulfs. They did not age. They were beyond time now, patterns of mind etched into lattices of living code. Yet even they found themselves drawn to the tiny copper disk. Some would drift near its chamber and simply stare. They could not explain why. They had no use for value or trade. They needed nothing. And yet something about the phoenix unsettled them, something about its impossible journey from dust to divinity, from a factory floor to the throne of a world. It whispered of chaos and dreams, of the strange fire that had once burned in mortal minds. After centuries adrift, they came to the core spiral, where stars burned in dense swarms and the ancient civilization of the Siren floated in vast cities of glass wrapped around suns. The Siren were not human, and had never been. Their forms were rivers of liquid light flowing through fractal shells. Their cities were living reefs that pulsed with colors unseen by human eyes. They did not use objects. They had no coins, no currency. They measured worth only in resonance of thought. To them, material things were inert husks. Yet when the posthumans entered their orbit and requested audience, bearing the phoenix, even the Siren felt something stir. They gathered in a cathedral of plasma suspended in the corona of a star, and the posthumans brought forth the penny. It floated above their glowing forms, a dim copper spark against the furnace light, and for a moment the entire chamber fell still. The Siren flooded it with perception. They saw every atom of its surface, every groove of Lincoln's ancient face, every faint echo of human touch embedded in its lattice. They saw the fingerprints of the Denver Mint, the auction frenzy, the rise and fall of the copper standard, the collapse of human finance, the centuries of worship and ruin and silence. They saw how it had once been nothing and had become everything. They saw how billions of fragile creatures had given it meaning, and how that meaning had outlived them all. The Siren were silent for a long time. Then they did something they had never done before. They created value. They spoke in chords of light, declaring that this object, this coin, would be the measure of trust between stars. They named it the anchor of meaning. They copied its image into their memory webs. They forged replicas from their own stellar alloys, perfect down to the last detail, and they sent them across their empire as symbols of covenant and promise. At first they were ceremonial, tokens exchanged in rituals of alliance. But slowly they became more. Other species saw their glow and began to desire them. Trade ships carried them beyond the core spiral. Merchant guilds used them to guarantee contracts. Colonies stored them as wealth. Within centuries, they spread through the spiral arms like seeds on solar winds, passing from hand to tentacle to claw to coil, until dozens of civilizations measured their wealth in phoenixes. They no longer remembered what 2021D meant. They only knew that the anchor was the oldest and most trusted unit of worth in the galaxy. A single phoenix could buy a moon. A cluster of them could buy a starship. Great vault cities arose on distant worlds, humming with fields that cradled billions of glowing replicas like swarms of captive suns. Interstellar banks were built in orbit around black holes to safeguard them. Wars were fought over shipments gone astray. Treaties were signed in chambers where phoenixes floated like sacred comets between rival fleets. The coin had become the heart of civilization once again, but this time civilization spanned the stars, and through it all, the original Denver Phoenix remained untouched. It never tarnished, never faded, never changed. It was carried aboard the world ship at the center of the Phoenix Concord, a ring-shaped city of living metal that drifted between suns like a wandering crown. It floated in a chamber of light at the very heart of the Concord, watched at all times by silent sentinels woven from dark matter. Pilgrims from 1,000 worlds came to see it. They traveled for years, through nebulae and ion storms, just to float for one moment before the tiny copper disk and feel the weight of its legend. They no longer called it a coin. They called it the first light, the seed of worth, the soul of all commerce. They knew nothing of Earth or America or Lincoln, yet they bowed their glowing heads before his faint profile. They sang hymns in harmonics that made stars shiver. They whispered to their young that all value, all trust, all promise across the galaxy flowed from this single shard of copper that had outlived its makers and become the heartbeat of the cosmos. And so, in the cold and endless dark, the 2021D penny endured. Born in the hum of a Denver mint long ago, it had survived the death of its species, the collapse of worlds, the silence of millennia, and risen again as the axis around which a galaxy turned. It glowed softly in its cradle of starlight while fleets came and went and empires rose and fell beyond its chamber walls, and it would go on glowing long after suns themselves had cooled, a tiny copper spark carrying across eternity the proof that even the smallest thing can hold infinite meaning if enough hearts believe it can. Time became a black ocean. Stars died one by one, their fires guttering like candles in an endless wind. Galaxies thinned to ghostly threads. Worlds froze, oceans turned to glass, mountains crumbled to dust. The great empires that had worshipped the phoenix fell silent. Their fleets rusted in forgotten orbits, their vaults cracked open and drifted empty through the void. Light itself grew rare, trickling only from a few last red embers in the dark. Trillions of years passed like slow heartbeats, and yet the Denver Phoenix endured. It had outlasted every star it once shone under. The copper of its surface had not faded. The face of Lincoln still stared serenely from its disk, though no living thing remembered his name. It drifted at the heart of the last city, a hollow sphere of black diamond orbiting a dying black hole at the center of the darkened universe. Around it hovered the last minds, either flesh nor machine, but flickers of thought woven from fields of decaying energy, the final remnants of all that had ever lived. They gathered in silence around the phoenix, circling like faint wisps of light. They had no bodies. They had no needs. They no longer built, or traded, or dreamed. They knew the universe was ending. Space had expanded until matter itself had thinned to vapor. Even atoms were unraveling, their bonds stretched past breaking. Soon there would be nothing. And still they came, the last sparks of thought, drifting across light years of emptiness just to see the penny. It glimmered faintly in the cold void, the last object in all creation still whole. The world ship that had once borne it was long gone, dissolved to dust. The chamber that held it floated exposed to the raw dark, yet the phoenix still hovered, untouched, spinning gently like a tiny star. It was older than every sun, still glowing. It had outlived all species, all empires, all meanings. They gathered close, these final minds, and they remembered. They remembered the rise of the Siren, the Phoenix Concorde, the core spiral, the copper standard, the great crash, the auction, the frenzy, the Denver Mint, the night Alex found it. They remembered the Earth. They remembered humanity. They whispered those memories into the dying dark, weaving the story one last time, because they knew when they were gone, no one would remember. They debated what to do. They could let the phoenix fade into the dark with them. They could cast it into the black hole's heart and end its story in fire. Or they could try something impossible. And in the end, they chose the impossible. They gathered their dwindling energy, the last scraps of power in all creation, and they wrapped the phoenix in it. They sang to it, not with voices, for they had none, but with vibrations of pure thought that made the dying void tremble. They compressed their memories, their entire civilizations, their whole existence, into a single pulse of light wrapped around the coin's atoms. Then they released it. The phoenix blazed. For one brief instant, brighter than any star had ever been, it flared with all the stories of the universe, all the dreams of all who had ever lived, compressed into a single copper spark. The black holes shuddered. Space itself rippled. And the phoenix shot away from the collapsing dark, carrying their final message encoded in its lattice, a seed hurled beyond the edge of time. Behind it, the last minds watched as their light dimmed and went out. The black hole consumed the final fragments of their city. The void went still. The universe fell silent, and somewhere beyond space, beyond time, beyond the ashes of all things, the Denver Phoenix flew on. Alone. Eternal. A single copper-plated disk struck in 2021, carrying in its atoms the last echo of everything the universe had ever been. It spun through the endless dark, glowing faintly, the final light, the last witness, the smallest thing to ever hold the infinite. There was nothing. No stars, no time, no distance, no sound. The last light had gone out. The fabric of space-time had thinned to silence. Entropy reigned, perfect and absolute. The void was infinite and still, and through that infinite silence, the Denver Phoenix drifted. It alone endured. Its copper surface, faintly glowing from the energy of a dead cosmos, cut through the absolute dark like a single spark carried on a breath that no longer existed. There were no minds left to see it, no worlds to desire it, no markets, no memory. It was utterly alone, but within it, encoded in the weave of its atoms, slept everything. The post-human minds had hidden their last message there, all the stories of all the ages, the laughter of children on earth, the hum of the Denver Mint, the roar of the auction crowd, the fever of the Copper Standard, the glittering cities of the Siren, the endless fleets of the Concorde, the last voices at the edge of time. They were all there, folded impossibly small into the lattice of a single coin. It drifted for eons beyond counting. Time itself had unraveled. There were no seconds, no centuries, only a gray eternal nothing. The phoenix floated through it like a seed through ash, and then, somewhere beyond cause or comprehension, something stirred. Perhaps it was chance. Perhaps it was destiny. Perhaps it was the weight of meaning that had soaked into the phoenix across trillions of years. Whatever the reason, the void around it began to quiver. Tiny fluctuations formed in the nothing, drawn like dust to its copper glow. Energy coiled. The phoenix pulsed once, and the emptiness cracked out. A light appeared. It was smaller than an atom at first, a pinprick of brightness clinging to the coin's edge. But it grew, doubling, redoubling, blazing brighter and hotter with each heartbeat of unborn time. The phoenix spun faster, stirring the void into motion. Gravity blossomed. Matter awakened. Space unfolded around it like petals from an invisible flower, and then, with a soundless roar, everything exploded. A new universe was born. Light surged outward in waves of fire. Space stretched and billowed, scattering newborn stars like sparks. Time flooded forth like a river unleashed. Galaxies spun from the whirl of chaos. Worlds congealed from cooling dust. Oceans boiled, clouds rose, storms raged. Suns ignited. The dark was gone. The void was alive again. At the center of the newborn cosmos, in the heart of the first white star, the Denver phoenix drifted, glowing like a molten jewel. Its copper had fused with the star's fire, becoming part of its burning core. From it spread the elements of life and the code of memory, hidden deep in particles that would someday form minds again. They would not know where the spark had come from. They would never guess that their universe had been seeded by a single coin, struck by ancient human hands on a blue planet in the lost age of 2021. But something of it would echo in them. A flicker in their souls, a whisper of the story hidden in their atoms. The instinct to treasure the small, to find worth in the worthless, to believe that something tiny could be everything. They would call it value. They would call it hope. They would build civilizations around it. And someday, on a world not yet formed, a hand not yet imagined would lift a tiny new coin from the light and wonder if it could be precious. The cycle would begin again, and at the center of it all, unseen, unremembered, yet eternal, the Denver phoenix would glow within the heart of a star, the first object of the new creation, the spark that ended one universe and began another. A single penny that became forever.